join me, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us today for this special meeting of the Charles County Board of Education. The purpose of our meeting today will be to discuss possible adjustments to the spring break schedule and April the 28th, the former primary election day. But before we start, I do want to say thank you to our CCPS staff for helping to make this presentation possible today. And thank you to the public for your patience with us as we navigate through this uncharted territory today. So please, let's begin. And I'll start with Dr. Hill.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, board members. Thank you for adjusting your schedules to hold this special meeting. As Mrs. McGraw said, we are in uncharted territory, and we're appreciative of the board members' support as well as our community support and patience as we work through this new way of providing teaching and learning in our community. The question for today's board meeting surrounds spring break as well as the primary election day. So we're going to ask board members to think about and then potentially vote on opening schools on Tuesday, April 14th and Tuesday, April 28th, and then to vote to seek a waiver from the state and potentially open schools on April 10th, April 13th, and June 2nd. So as board members know, we conducted a very quick flash survey of our community, and in less than 24 hours got 14,000 responses. 54% of those responses were parents, 24% of those respondents were students, and 21% of the respondents were staff members. 61% of the respondents overall were in favor of eliminating all 3 spring break days, which would be Good Friday, Easter Monday, as well as that Tuesday, the 14th. 14% wanted us to close just on Good Friday and then open for the remainder of the days. 13% thought that we should leave things as they are, and then 11% suggested that we close on Friday and Monday and then open on that Tuesday. So today we're asking the board to consider that information and to consider the value of continuing distance learning as often as we can, because we have had students out of school for 10 days due to the COVID-19 virus. So that's kind of background information for the board, Mrs. McGraw, and we're happy to provide any answers to questions that board members have as they have their discussion.
All right, thank you very much. Mrs. Abel, I see your hand first.
I would like to go ahead and make a motion to go with our constituents' majority recommendation for opening schools up for all 3.
Is there a second?
A second. This is Taj.
Okay, been moved and seconded that we go with the suggestion to close schools on April the 10th, 13th, and 14th. Is there any discussion?
Ms. McGraw, excuse me, was that?
I'm sorry?
No.
I think it was Mrs. Abel's motion, and what did you just say?
To vote, the motion was to close, to open. Keep schools open.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much. To keep schools open on April the 10th, 13th, and 14th. Mr. Hancock, you have your hand up.
Yep. So the only discussion I would like to add is, And I do agree that we should take that route. An overwhelming majority, 61% of our constituents want to do that. For a lot of people, especially those of the Catholic faith, Good Friday is a very important holiday. Granted, everything is closed, but I think we have to look out for if people can't complete their work for some reason due to the holiday, will they be excused?
At this point, Mr. Hancock, we are not grading or collecting any material at this point, and we are going to be as flexible as we need to be regarding when students are able to complete work that we're providing for them. So yes, absolutely.
Okay. Yep, that's just something I wanted to ask, and I do agree with the motion. So that's it.
Any other discussion? Input? Mr. Schwartz?
I believe we need a second. I don't know if we had a second to that motion.
Yes, we did. Ms. Lockhart?
Okay, thank you.
I would just like to offer my comments. While I do agree that it's a good idea for us to take advantage of these days, so that if there to be a waiver, it shows that we in good faith try to make up some of the days. But I have to say that I do not agree with opening schools on Good Friday. I think not just Catholics honor that day, but there are other Christians as well. So that would be my only comment. Any other comments? Discussion.
Mrs. McGraw?
Dr. Hill?
So, Mr. Schwartz, are you comfortable with the wording of the motion? Do we need to include the application for a waiver to open schools on Friday and Monday, or okay with the motion the way it stands?
As we all know, the board has the authority to open up that Tuesday without any further action from the state. But if we need to open up for Good Friday and Easter Monday, we will need a state waiver for those days. They're state considered school holidays. So we would need to either add to this motion or make a separate motion to ask for a waiver from the state board for those 2 days particularly, and also the primary election day on June 2nd, if we want to talk about that as well.
So is it my understanding that we have to amend this motion anyway? Because we have to add that we have to ask for a waiver on the 10th and the 13th. Is that correct?
Yes, we can amend this motion to make that part of this one motion, yes.
Okay. Any further discussion?
I would like to ask another question if possible.
Mr. Hancock?
So if we make this decision to include Good Friday and it's accepted, so it's a two-part question. The first part of the question, would that require a few essential employees to report to central office? And if so, would they normally report on Good Friday under normal circumstances?
Dr. Hill?
So that's a great question, Mr. Hancock, and AFSCME employees in particular and are entitled to those two holidays as a part of their contract. So we would have to work with them, and I feel quite sure we could resolve this issue with them to be sure that they got those two holidays in some other way.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Abel?
I'd like to make an amendment to the motion to include a request for the waiver per Mr. Schwartz's instructions.
Is there a second for that?
I second.
Who seconded that, please?
Mike and I both did.
Okay.
You can choose.
All right. So at this point, is there any discussion on that? So let's vote on the amendment.
This is just the amendment.
Just the amendment.
Okay.
And the amendment is to include in the original vote to ask for a waiver for April the 10th and April the 13th. Is that correct, Mr. Schwartz?
Correct, and we also want to talk about June 2nd. It's another part of that request. It can be a separate discussion, though.
I want to save that for a separate discussion. Let's not muddy the waters anymore. We have to, okay? All right, so let's take a vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment to ask for a waiver for April the 10th, to include asking for a waiver in the original motion for April the 10th and 13th, please raise your hand so I can see it. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In favor? Any opposed? Miss Wilson, I didn't see your hand. I can't hear you either.
She said she was in favor.
Oh, okay, thank you. 6 in favor and 1 student opinion in favor, 1 opposed, which is me. Okay, so the amendment carries. Any more discussion on the motion? Which is, the motion is to now ask for a waiver to open schools on April the 10th and 13th, and to include April the 14th as start of spring break to be open on those days. Okay, Mrs. Abel?
I was voting.
Oh, okay. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm missing 5. Okay, in favor, student opinion in favor. All those opposed? 2. Okay, motion carries. So we will ask for a waiver for April the 10th and April the 13th, and we will open schools on April the 14th. Now, the next matter at hand is to discuss opening school on April the 28th, which formerly was primary election day. Mrs. Abel.
Motion to open schools on April the 28th.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Mrs. Brown. Any discussion on that one?
Do we have to amend this one as well to ask for the waiver?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay,
Because it was it's not a state holiday.
right.
Do I see any other discussion? Okay, let's take a vote. All those in favor of Mrs. Abel's motion, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in favor, and student opinion in favor. Okay, the motion carries. Now, Mr. Schwartz, did I hear you say earlier that we need to discuss June the 2nd?
The governor has made June 2nd the new primary election day, which is now considered a school holiday. Our calendar currently has that as a school day. So we need to change the calendar to close the day, and also, if you're interested, seek a waiver from the state board to allow us to have school that day if we'd want to.
Okay. Do I hear a motion? I think Mrs. Abel's our motion maker. Mrs. Abel, please.
Motion to open schools on to close schools on June 2nd and ask for a waiver.
Second.
It's been seconded by Ms. Lockhart. Discussion. Mr. Lucas.
So, suppose suppose the schools remain closed because of the current COVID-19 situation. We then is there a possibility we could come back or would we need to come back and change this again? Because if the buildings aren't open, I don't see how that impacts us.
It seems to me we would have to come back. Dr.
I think, and I'm going to defer to Mr. Schwartz if he wants to change my mind, but I believe that if we vote to close schools and then ask for a waiver to reopen schools, whether the schools are physically open or not, we would still be open for distance learning. And I would hope we could do that all in one action today. Mr. Schwartz?
That's correct.
So asking for a waiver, sorry.
Go ahead, Mr. Lucas.
So asking for the waiver is asking to reopen in the event that we are still in this situation?
Mr. Schwartz, it's referring to you.
I believe, and Ms. Abel can correct me if she made the motion, I believe the motion was to open either way. If we're physically allowed to come to school, we would do that. If not, we would continue with distance learning that day. It would still count as a school day.
I thought the motion was waiver, Mr. Lucas, is that much like Good Friday and Easter Monday, a state primary is also a day we have to request a waiver for if we were going to hold school.
Yeah, but I think Taj is right. We're actually talking about, we're not opening, we're trying to close.
Well, the motion was to close on June the 2nd and ask for a waiver. Am I correct?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So this is my point. Why I think. So if the motion's to close, and we are in the same situation we are now, then we would have to come back together again and vote. Is that correct? If it was that was the board's will.
Yes.
So do we have to?
Mr. Schwartz?
Well, my understanding what the board is seeking to do now is to change its calendar to reflect the fact that we're not allowed to have school on a school holiday June 2nd, but then to ask the state for a waiver to reopen schools on that day. So we wouldn't have to come back to make any other action. We're informing the public now that we're seeking a state board waiver to keep schools open June 2nd, even though technically we have to close it for a school holiday. So it's sort of a double action. We're closing them first and looking to get state approval to reopen them. If we take no action, we have to close schools on June 2nd because it's a school holiday. Our current calendar does not reflect that, so we need to change the calendar to reflect that, but then seek a waiver to reopen schools that day either way.
Is it basically how we work? It's in how we word it when we send the amendment to cover both ways. If we're still closed, we can do what we're trying to do right now for spring break. But if we end up opening, it covers us to close for elections if we need to. Am I hearing this right?
No, I think it's backwards.
No, the motion is to close school on June the 2nd and ask for a waiver.
That's what I thought. But it sounds like I'm hearing something totally different.
Right.
Hey, Dr. Hill?
So I think that what you said was the motion was to close schools on June 2nd in accordance with the law, but then to ask for a waiver to reopen schools on June 2nd to conduct instruction, whether it's face-to-face or not face-to-face. My hope is the board doesn't have to come back and take another action for us to be able to hold instruction on June 2nd.
I have a question.
Okay, Mr. Hancock?
Is it a good idea, and I am a little confused now, but even if we're not face-to-face learning, if there is a primary election going on, is it a good idea for us to place any kind of burden that would prevent anyone from partaking in that? If we're going to ask for a waiver to open during primary day?
if the schools are open, are some of our schools used as polling places on a primary election? I don't think so, though. I'm thinking out loud.
They are.
Well,
Yes, they are.
Oh, yes.
Some of the schools are used as polling places, but some of the news that we're hearing, and I think Ms. O'Malley Simpson is going to clear this up for us, is that we may be voting in a different way.
Ms. O'Malley? Where are you? You went away.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
yeah,
Okay.
see ya.
So my understanding is that the State Board of Election yesterday voted to do most of the primary election by mail, but that they will be opening either 1 to 4 sites for on that day voting. Now, whether that has to go through the governor's office and hasn't yet, I don't know. That may be part of what he announces today during his press conference. But I don't think we'll be using all of our schools like we normally do.
Okay. So is there any further discussion on this motion?
My personal opinion is maybe we should hold off on that. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Lucas?
I'm trying to understand what Mr. Schwartz said. If it's mandated that schools close on a primary election day, then why is it we need to take a vote? Because in our calendar it didn't show as a closed day. Is that correct?
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? All right, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the motion? Do you want me to repeat the motion?
Yes.
Okay.
with verbiage on exactly what the waiver is for.
Yes, thank you. Yes, because I'm a little.
Okay. Someone correct me if I'm wrong. The motion was to close school on June the 2nd and ask for a waiver to reopen to hold instruction on that day. Is that correct?
Hold instruction on that day with a primary election going on, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. I see 1, 2.
We need a second.
Oh,
Need a second.
Sure.
no, we already had a second. We're voting on.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't hear a second.
So raise your hand again, David. I can't see. Your hand's not up.
No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And student opinion is in favor. All those opposed? 1. Motion carries. I think those were all 3 things that were part of the agenda. As part of this special meeting, that's all we will discuss at this time. Therefore, the chair will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and student opinion in favor. The meeting is adjourned. But before we leave, I'd just like to say thank you all very much for your cooperation and patience today. And stay safe.
Yep.
Mr. Lucas, what are you going to say? How many times do you have to wash your hands?
A lot.
All right, have a great afternoon.
Oh.
Thank you.